Welcome everybody to this joint event with the Junior Lawyers Division and Leicestershire Law Society. I think we've got a mixed audience and participants, including I think one or two students. Just a reminder, this is being recorded, so if you do not wish to have your face on Facebook, take it out now. We've had the CVs, you've all had the CVs from the panel members, so you will be able to identify them from their names on their screens. So, and if you wish to ask questions as and when, put them in the chat box and then I will read them and read them out. But I will start by asking one question that I think occurs throughout everyone's career, which is, how do I move from one firm to another without leaving looking bad on my CV and my reputation? So I invite our panel members to answer that. Who wishes to start?
By all means, go ahead and select somebody, Crystal. We're all willing victims here.
Well, Glynis, why don't we start with you, because you've made a somewhat unusual move from the public sector to the private sector.
Yes, I did. Well, I always believe that you should be front facing. I don't think in this day and age anyone stays in a job for life. That may be that you don't stay in one law firm for life, or it may be that you don't stay in one career for life. And I've always been a great believer in reinvention. But what I did do is swap my training contract. So I actually changed law firms mid-training contracts. It was quite a relevant question because obviously that was considered to be quite an unusual thing to do. And that was because I was headhunted by another firm and I looked at the advantages that I felt that other firm could offer me, and I made the decision to therefore swap. And I think as long as you are incredibly hardworking and you have integrity, why should it be seen as a bad thing as long as it's something that you can justify? And clearly it didn't disadvantage me because I went on to be a partner very quickly within the law firm that had taken me on. I think they made me a partner within 3 years of qualifying. But I think it's all about making sure that you don't leave any kind of difficulty behind you. If you have integrity, you're hardworking, you undertake all of your lawyering duties well, you should have the right to self-determine if another opportunity comes along that is good for you. However, having said that, you don't want to keep on doing it. Clearly, you want to show that you can have loyalty and commitment to a firm, but not to the extent that you feel you have to stay there forever. I hope that's helpful anyway.
Linda, you've had a portfolio career. Can you add to that?
Oh yes, I've reinvented myself every few years throughout my life. I changed legal specialisms without caring if people think it looks bad on my CV, because I think when I qualified, I remember as a trainee getting the serious word that if you're a litigator, it looks really bad if you move firms. It looks like you're leaving behind your problems. But that was 94 when I qualified, and I think the world's moved on since then. And certainly it's the modern world is very different. I don't think people expect that you will stay with them cradle to grave, grateful that you're given the opportunity to qualify there. And it doesn't always suit a firm to have somebody stay for a long term either. The firm will do what's best for them, and you should do what's best for yourself. But even if you do leave because you really hated the people there, personally, I would never let them know. Leave everybody on good terms. Find good things to say about your time there. Write a nice letter or email now saying, I really enjoyed this about your firm. I'm really grateful for the opportunity you gave me here. And I don't think anybody will ever think that you've done anything wrong. Everyone's realistic about what the world is about now and the need to change, because firms have to change. And we have to change more often, more rapidly than we ever did in days gone by.
Amanda, would you like to say anything? You're 4 years qualified. Have you made your first move yet?
Well, my move wasn't really my choice because it was the acquisition of my company. So that was a completely different type of a move. But yes, things happen like that. So it's more about being able to adapt and essentially stay in a place that makes you happy. And if the company that you're working for is great and you enjoy working there, then you'll stay as long as you like. But obviously life might dictate that, you know, you want to move to a different area, or you might fall out of love in the practice area that you're in. That the whole potential, I don't know, the thought of prejudice against that shouldn't really stop you doing that. And I completely agree with what both ladies have said. You know, if you feel the need to move, you move, and definitely don't burn any bridges behind, because, you know, you keep coming across the same people. And actually you think that the community is very, very big, but it's not. Everybody knows each other, and you will keep coming across the same people. So there's absolutely zero point in burning bridges behind.
Anyone want to add anything to that? I think it's a matter of balance. But I think from what you've said, on the basic rule now in 2021 is that you should consider moves and not stay in the same place all the time, right to retirement. Right, we don't have a question from the audience yet, so please feel free to put them in the chat box. So I'll ask one totally differently. Do you have to look and present yourself in a certain way to fit in the legal world? So I'll put Gina on the spot first for that.
Yes, I thought that one might be coming to me. I think it depends on the firms that you're in as well. I remember when I first started in practice, in the first firm that I actually ended up qualifying with, because I actually moved as well during my training contract for various reasons. But it was a legal aid firm, and it was a very casual firm. And you could wear jeans and you could wear jumpers and things like that, because I didn't want to alienate the clients because of the sort of client base that they had. And I remember I was working at one of the satellite offices, and I was wearing like a flowery skirt and a pink scarf and matching pink trainer pumps and, you know, things like that. And somebody rushed into me and was about to be evicted, so I had to rush to court with dressed in pink. And the housing officer says, "Oh, didn't you bring your solicitor with you today?" And I was like, "I'm the solicitor," you know. And from there, I sort of decided that regardless of where I was working, I was going to show up in shirts and trousers and a jacket hanging up on the back of my chair, just in case I was ever going to court again, so I wouldn't be embarrassed before the judge. I mean, thankfully, the judge themselves weren't so bothered by the way I looked, but, you know, it obviously made an impression on my opposition, which is always not the sort of impression that you want when you want to be taken quite seriously. And, you know, obviously we all do look quite different. I, for one, wear a scarf. I know other ladies wear full hijab. And then you have, I've seen barristers at court who are definitely trying to make a fashion statement with their little short leather jackets and boots and things, and quite rebellious. So I suppose fitting in is about how you present yourself at court, and as long as you are fairly smartly dressed in dark colours, I don't think anybody really bothers and then really minds really. And it's also the way that you present yourself and where you come across when you're speaking, and actually knowing the law and not trying to wing it, I suppose, as well.
Matthew, when I started, I was told all men had to wear ties, but as you are not, can you give us your view on that?
Yeah, sure. I changed career, so I was a registered general nurse, and then went and did a degree and came into the law that way. And obviously, you wear a uniform as a nurse, and I was very naive about a lot of things about the law as I first came into it. I think I was in my early 30s, and I remember somebody saying to me, well, actually saying to my partner, "Look, please tell him that he needs to look the part. He must look like a lawyer. It's really important if he wants to secure training contracts, work experience." I think maybe at that time, as I was going through university, I may have looked a bit like a bedraggled hippie. That's possible. And I think even during the time that I've been working in this area, which is 20 years, things have changed, and they're changing all the time. But you need to be really, really careful. There's no point, I think, unnecessarily making life difficult for yourself. It's difficult enough. It's difficult enough. It's if you don't have to make something difficult for yourself, don't. So I kind of looked at it when I came in as just another uniform. Okay, fine. So I need to wear a suit. I need to wear a tie. The tie thing has changed in recent years. And Gina's absolutely right. It does very much depend on what type of law you're practicing, what kind of firm you're in, and you need to be aware of how your clients in whatever area of law you're in perceive you, and what they think a lawyer should look like. So I'm personally, the minute I can get out of a suit, the second I can get into something that makes me look more like a normal human being, I will absolutely do that. But you need to be aware that appearances are extremely important, and there's no way around that. And of course, it's the same in any number of professions, not simply the law. So smart is the only sensible advice I can give. I think conservative with a small c, smart. Don't let people score points off you unnecessarily, when, as I say, it's difficult enough as it is.
Yep, thank you. That's a very good comment. Sort of, I mean, would anybody like to comment on that from a female perspective? May I say at the beginning that this isn't normally part of my uniform. I fell over on the canal, and but it is coming off this week.
I add something from a
Yeah.
female perspective, because at one time women were frowned on wearing trousers. You couldn't wear trousers in the office. Strict code on what you could wear in court, nothing too low cut in case you influence the court by your seductively low cut dress. And I think it's still a lot harder for women because we have more choices of what to wear, and we're judged on what choices we make, whether our hair is up or down, whether we wear makeup or we don't wear makeup, whether we wear dresses or trousers, high heels, low heels. Whereas men, they get away with pretty much anything by sticking on any suit and tie. And that's it, they're covered for all bases, and they have comfortable shoes. So if they're doing a site inspection on a building site, they're fine. We might have made the wrong choice for that site inspection. So I would just say it's really hard for women still making the right choice. And obviously, I'm not the person to model yourself on. I always wanted to look like Glynis, actually. We're the same age, but she looks stunningly better than me. So I try and work. Oh, sorry, Glynis. No, actually, I'm 10 years older than Glynis. But Glynis always looks so stylish. So she's my heroine I try and model myself on. But I think that's not too bad a plan. Is look at what other people are wearing in the office. And whilst you might have your own individual style, make sure you're not so far deviated from it that you stand out for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Gina, you always look so smart. You must have something to add on that.
Only what I really said earlier on, but I don't know. I'm a very much a trousers and shirt person in the office anyway. occasionally might wear a dress, but everyone's always so surprised if they ever see me in a dress. I like to be able to run very quickly to the courts, and flat shoes and trousers that allows you to do that, really. But I suppose the other side of it is, from a number of years now, I've always sort of had my own firm anyway. So it would be very hard for anybody to tell me what to wear in the office, really.
Could I just add something to this?
Yep.
It's going to make me sound very conservative, I know, but there is absolutely no question. If we're talking about how do you increase your opportunities to get a training contract or a job, the job of your dreams, really don't take a risk on what you're wearing. Of course, you're going to go in dressed immaculately. That's not just for law, that's anything. If you're going into court, it will give you an extra boost of confidence to be looking the way that most people stereotype a lawyer to look. And that's what you should do. So we're definitely not at the stage, I don't care what anyone says, where dress can be relaxed as lawyers. I think you should dress like a lawyer. It's a sign of respect for your client, because they'll expect you to look like a lawyer as well. And that's the firm view that I take, is keep the standards up. Absolutely.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. So now moving on to a different sphere, I've got another question, but we've got 12 participants. No one's asked their own question yet, so do put
I think there is one in the comment section.
in the comment. Are you right? So that's chat.
Yes.
No, it does not come up in mine.
Okay.
So.
It just says this is a question for Glynis and Gina. What was the turning point for you both to set up your own firms?
Oh, do you want to go first, Gina, or shall I?
I always decide to set up my own firm. So even when I was in law school, I realized at that point I had to have 3 years PQE and I could be my own principal in my own practice. And it was always my desire to do so. And I pretty much set my firm sights on that's how it was going to go. AGR Law is actually my second firm. My first firm I set up just as at the tail end or sort of middle of the recession back in sort of 2011. As I was leaving quite a large legal aid firm in London at that point to set up in private practice. So even that, going from a legal aid law to private practice law, was actually a very big learning curve for me, and not being scared to actually charge clients, and not being too sorry for clients because I had my overheads to pay. So, and setting my fees at the right sort of level for experience that I had. And I actually sold that firm after a few years and stayed on for a bit until I thoroughly just had enough and decided to move on again. That firm in itself has actually merged once or twice since I've left, and it's doing quite well for itself. So I'm quite pleased that my baby's still going, even if I've got nothing to do with it. So yeah, so after I consulted for a very short period of time, and then myself and my current business partner set up AGR Law. And I've got to say, there's probably a bit of hubris in me saying this, but I just thought I could do it better than what I was doing in the legal aid firm. And I knew how I wanted my firm to feel and look, and I knew how I wanted myself to feel and look when they were coming to work, and not having the dread in the pit of the stomach because it's Monday morning and a massive case waiting for them, a massive caseload. So I've always had that desire and the drive, I suppose, and I know I'm thoroughly unemployable now at this stage. So I have to keep persisting and doing well.
Brilliant. I mean, Gina and I will speak very enthusiastically about setting up our own firms, won't we? I definitely did not decide from the outset that I was going to set up my own law firm. I mean, it was a big enough shift to decide to become a lawyer much later in life. And my aspiration was entirely to become a partner in a law firm. So when I managed that after 3 years of qualification, I was absolutely chuffed. Within 18 months, I wanted to set up my own law firm. That's how quickly it happened. Some of it was, for me, frustration. It was a firm where the other partners were super, absolutely super, but they were all male. And I had become rapidly one of their biggest fee earners. And I wanted to get involved in management and learn about the management of a firm, because that was part of my duties as a partner. Obviously, you carry liabilities as a partner. And they said, oh, you just carry on earning the money and we'll sort out all the management. Well, that didn't go down too well with me, because I used to be a union rep as well. So you can imagine I think I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get stuck in here. I dare say I was like a blunt instrument, but the fact is it led to frustration. I also had a lot of ideas about how I thought we could take the firm forward, and it happened a bit too slowly that they either adopted the ideas or made a decision. So it seemed to me in the end that in order for me to feel that I could exert myself, for it to be a truly empowering career that I wanted, I needed to set up my own firm. So I think I did that when I was 5 years qualified, and I can honestly say it was one of the best things I did. As some of you may know, many years on, 11 years on, I've recently sold my law firm to Nelson's, wonderful firm Nelson's, where I am now a partner there leading my family law team who came across with me. So the other thing, of course, you get to do when you think about running your own law firm is build up an asset to sell, which is worth thinking about.
The next issue is the big one, particularly for those at the early stages of their career, who may not be having to embrace it. How do you actually embrace the issues of marketing and competition? Is it possible to survive without doing any marketing? And as I think you're all at different sort of institutions, I think all the answers will be different. So do you want to start, Amanda, with your ideas?
Of course. Marketing is a very interesting thing, especially when you start your career, because it's not really something that you're ever taught.
No.
And it's not something that anybody really mentions at university or at any stage of becoming a lawyer. And you know, you start your training contract, and depending on the firm that you are and the sort of attitude they take, you get invited to sort of tag along and see what, you know, the partners and the associates are doing. And it is a very strange concept to start with, but you very quickly start to understand why you're doing it. And, you know, this is actually a very important part of the business, because at the very start of your career, nobody really knows you apart from your supervisor and your sort of team members. And it's a very good way to start building a reputation, start building contacts, start meeting people who are at similar stages of their careers in their respective fields. Because whilst people do move around various places, like we've mentioned, they don't tend to move away that far. And given how, you know, we can interact with anybody in any place in the world at the moment, you can carry on those relationships and the business and, you know, catching up with these people for years to come. And, you know, whilst you're progressing as a junior lawyer to an associate partner, they'll be progressing to an associate director, setting up their own companies, and you kind of grow your careers side by side. So it's very, very important. And it's strange that nobody mentions it very early on. And it's very strange that we don't really get taught any of it. It's just something that comes. But yes, once you get yourself into it and try meeting new people a few times and try to sort of break the ice a little bit and start building relationships and see the same people at various events and go out and show your face, it starts to become easier and a lot more enjoyable, and you get a lot more out of it the more you do it. So if you're ever struggling for motivation and you're feeling a bit anxious about going out and showing your face, just give it a go. Even for 10 or 15 minutes, it will get easier.
So that's sort of like person-to-person sort of networking.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the other end of the scheme, we have Nelson's. For anybody that reads the Leicester Mercury, they appear in it 2 or 3 times a week, telling you how strong and how empowering they are. So perhaps one of the people from Nelson's, Glynis or Matthew, perhaps you can tell us about Nelson's marketing policy.
Yeah, sure. So I've been at Nelson's since I started in the law. I haven't moved firms. I moved careers, a big move, but I haven't moved firms. So I started at Nelson's as a paralegal in the year 2000. and have since worked up to partner. It's a reasonably big regional firm, so it has its own dedicated marketing department, its own dedicated marketing budget, its own dedicated team. A lot of smaller firms won't have those kind of structures for obvious reasons. But there's no doubt that fee earners, lawyers, are very much expected to be involved in any number of marketing initiatives, often tailored to their own area of work, but also to raise the profile of the firm generally. Now, again, when I came in as a naive ex-nurse, like Amanda, I'd done some academic legal work to get qualified. By that point, I had no idea about any of this. It is hugely important. It is hugely important. It is how we get our work. How more important can it be? It is hugely important. And yes, there are various different ways of doing that apart from networking, but networking is important. But in my view, it's vital that junior members of the team, very junior members of the team, newly qualified, paralegals, trainees, are supported and protected in relation to any marketing activities they may be involved in, because it's quite frightening and it's quite strange, and it's quite an undertaking to go out with a bunch of lawyers, meeting a bunch of other lawyers and business people who you've never seen before, and then start making conversation with them. That's a big step, and it takes quite a while to develop the skill, I think, of being able to do that effectively and confidently. And we shouldn't be expecting junior lawyers simply to go out there and do it. Now, some people will be absolute natural born networkers and will hit the ground running and they'll be fantastic, but not everybody will. And as you come into the profession and you start to put your toe in the water of these various different marketing activities, in my view, it's very important that you are supported and that you go out to a whatever kind of event it might be, and that there's no pressure on you at all to do anything, and that the senior people are there with you and they're doing all the legwork, and you can just have a look at how it works. And when you feel more comfortable and more confident, fine. But it's a really important part of the job. It's a really, really vital part of the job. And you need to get involved. You must get involved, but with the support of your senior colleagues.
Could I add something here, Crystal?
Of course, yeah.
I don't doubt that networking is a huge part of marketing, but I've always loved marketing and enjoyed it. And at one point, I went to a large national firm. I was headhunted. I was given my own marketing budget. I was thrilled. And then I realized they didn't feel my type of work, I was doing medical negligence at the time, quite fitted with their image. So I couldn't spend any of it. And so I had to find creative ways of marketing. And I'd like to reassure people who don't like networking, who don't like partying, that that's not all there is to marketing. because you can market by building a reputation in a niche area. You can have cases, you can write about those cases, talk about those cases, and word gets around that there's someone with expertise, you're the go-to person. And in some ways that can be more valuable in developing a sustainable client base than going to events. So yes, if your firm requires you to go, you should go with good grace. But if you're not a natural party person, don't despair. You can develop a significant reputation and a following without going that route. There are other ways. So think creatively. Who is it I want to get my message to? And what's the message I really want to get to them? And that's the important thing to remember. And then think creatively about what works for you, your firm, your client base, and the client base you want to have. And that will vary from work type to work type, but don't think partying and networking is the be all and end all, because it's really not.
Can I just support that?
Yeah.
Actually? Because when I was a trainee solicitor and I was given the task of building up, I was doing building up the family department at the firm that I'd gone to, because the previous partner had become ill and had disappeared. So the family caseload had just dwindled. There was no marketing budget. There was no networking. The firm didn't even know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. And what you can do is just basically get the recommendation. So we're all talking about marketing, but the most fundamental foundation for any lawyer is word of mouth. It's always going to be the most powerful tool. It doesn't matter how much networking you do, you are only as good as your last case. And all I did, building up the caseload, was just say to my lovely clients, if they seem really, really pleased, please spread the word. I'm new on the scene. I need all the help I can get. And they were wonderful. And they did spread the word. And the work started coming in so quickly that by the time I'd qualified, I'd actually built up a credible family department. When I set up my own firm, I took it onto a new level, and I never knew I'd enjoy marketing in the way that I did. And I kind of looked at 360 degree, the magazines, the billboards, the social media, everything. And for the creative people, it is an enormous amount of fun. It's fantastic. But never forget that no matter how hard you market, you're only as good as your last case. Remember your clients. They're the ones who are going to put the Google reviews on. They're the ones, and that is what people read, is your Google reviews. So make sure that you get the word of mouth recommendations coming in, and never lose sight of that.
Gina, do you want to add anything to that? Just recently, well, you've got your own.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. I find it interesting what Amanda was saying, because I remember when I was in law school, we had a mentor come in, and she asked us, she was a partner in her own firm, and she asked us, well, what do we see our objectives would be as junior lawyers? And I was very much like, we would get our clients in. And she admonished me for it, saying, no, that's our job. We do that as the partners. And it stuck with me for a very long time. And then obviously, because I started my career in legal aid, and then when I set up in private practice, I realized actually, I've actually got to start marketing. I've got to get out there and do that. And I had to build my own brand. And, you know, I'm actually quite a bit of an introvert, and I've had to actually stand on my own 2 feet and say, actually, I can't be an introvert anymore, or let that be a hindrance to me. And I've got to build my reputation, because people are only going to refer to people, and they've got to know who I am to refer work to me. And Glynis is very right, and most of our work comes from word of mouth. So whether that's existing or ex-clients, or people in the community that I've done work with. I mean, I've been quite active with different community groups, like Leicester Rate Prices, and some of the schools, doing governorship and membership, and helping charities to set up. So I've been very active, and I get quite a bit of work from them as well, and that still comes through. I've got contacts from 12 years ago or so who still refer work over to me as well. So it really is about building up your personal brand, and being known for being a good solicitor and a good listener, and someone who gets results for your clients. And then there are the other sides of that, such as content writing, and posting things as your firm name, or on behalf of the firm if you're employed. So there's all of those sort of things that you have to put together, and become a bit of a jack of all trades, I suppose, when it comes to marketing, and so forth. And networking, I've only really sort of got the hang of networking in the last 3 or 4 years. But you find your group, you get to love it, and you keep moving on and building your networks wider and wider.
Now that's very, I mean, what's emerging is that now anybody that qualifies as solicitor from the moment of qualification onwards, or even before, has to do marketing. It can no longer be left to the partners or the members or the marketing department, whoever they are, so that you're effectively doing two jobs all the time. Any questions? Any questions from the floor? No, come on, there's 13 of you now. You must have some other questions you want to ask us. Just
and those of them on Facebook as well.
Sorry?
And those of them on Facebook as well. That's streaming.
Yes, come on, let's have some. In the minute, let me just ask Linda, because you've done a portfolio career that's been based in private practice, but you've also sort of gone off at a, well, I suppose tangent is the wrong word, in that you've got judicial appointments and National Law Society appointments. You've been president. I mean, how much do you think the aspect of marketing was important to you to get up to being the head of the Law Society?
I don't know that marketing helped me at all, and I think it was a punishment in some ways rather than a blessing.
Okay.
But to give you an example, any organisation you're involved with. So, for example, today I'm chair of the Solicitors Assistance Scheme. It's not a job; it's a voluntary role, and we are volunteers who gather together to give advice to people who are distressed, solicitors, people who work in their firms, their families. This is a shameless plug, and this is marketing. If you want help and advice, we can give you initial help and advice free. If you're in the office and having a difficult moment and about to do something that could end your career, ring one of us first and ask us, what should I do? Because that's what we're there for. But if we just sit, we're all there with you have to pass an entrance test almost to get onto the panel, to be allowed to advise people. Absolutely no good if nobody knows we're there to give advice. If no one knows we're there, nothing happens. And as I say, we're all busy lawyers and we're not really focused. We all have our own interests, but we do have to get out there and plug the SAS, because otherwise no one comes to us. I'm a commissioner at the Criminal Cases Review Commission. We have exactly the same issue, that if people don't know that they can come to us when their appeal route has been exhausted and we might be able to refer their case back to the Court of Appeal, we're just sat in a room twiddling our thumbs. And so marketing exists in all areas of your life, whether it's paid or unpaid work. But if you want to actually do something, you have to let people know you're there. And so I think that's the important thing to say. Whatever job you wander into, I do actually have some roles, and they're actually quasi-judicial roles, where we're meant to keep quiet and not draw attention to ourselves because we're making decisions about people's careers. And so in those types of roles, I don't have to promote the medical practitioners tribunal service, because sadly doctors will find themselves there without wanting to be there. But for most areas of life, if it's activities you're engaged in outside of the law, your hobbies, your interests, you'll need to be marketing in some shape or form. My other advice to people is don't take on as many voluntary roles as I do. It's perhaps not wise, but it's good to have one or two that you really care about and are really interested in. And so I'd recommend it. And if anyone doesn't know where to volunteer, I can find them somewhere to volunteer with bells on.
Thank you, Linda. And I will therefore unashamedly make a plug on behalf of the Solicitors charity, which has very, very similar issues. People don't know we're there, and we can't help people if they don't apply to us. And it's quite obvious for some of the messes people get themselves into. We get phone calls saying the bailiffs are here, help. But we could have helped them 6 months before if they'd only come to us. So it is getting out there and knowing that you're there. I think the expression is, if you don't ask, you don't get, and it's a sort of spin-off from that. If people don't know you're looking for something, they'll think you don't want it. Any more questions from the floor?
Yes, this was back at Linda. How do you balance all the various roles you have? You've spoken about so many different things that you've done. What is a typical day like for you?
Oh, it's horrendous. And I ordered a nice desk diary because I believe in a paper diary because I've got so many different roles. And by mistake, I was sent this one with little fluffy bunny rabbits on it. So at the moment, this is center of my universe. In here, in this fluffy bunny diary, is listed everything I do. So I get up very early, I do some work on something, and then I start my main day. And then after this is over, I've got a couple more meetings lined up. And that's what I mean. Don't do this. Get a sense of proportion, and balance your life. Don't make your life all about the law. It's a sad mistake. But having said that, I have enormous fun doing different jobs. But the critical thing, the serious answer is what you must never do is promise to do something and then not do it. You've got to be able to say no. If you don't think you can fit something in, say no. Just don't let people down, and be realistic about how long it takes. I always estimate how long any job takes me, and then I sort of double it, and then I might be a bit closer. But things always take longer than you think. So careful diary planning, don't overcommit, say no when you have to, but above all, enjoy what you're doing, or it's really not worth it.
Thanks, Linda. Any more from the floor? No,
Not at the moment.
if I can just address the delegates who've come. I believe that there may be some students present. Are there any of you still studying and still wanting to decide whether you want to be a solicitor? Or is it all people who already are solicitors?
There is one student at the moment online.
Right. Well, if you've got a student here, would he or she like to ask a question about becoming a solicitor? I've got a whole load of questions, things they might want to know, but do you want to ask a question?
Could I ask Rishi, are you putting out information, and Amanda, about the SQE and how different that is going to make qualifying as a solicitor? It might be helpful if you touched on that, because I think it will be very different from now on, the experience of qualifying.
I would agree with that. I've been to a few workshops on the SQE, the purpose of which is to widen, well, it's got lots of purposes, to widen the socio-economic profile of the profession. Whether it will succeed in doing that remains to be seen, but it will be very different to what all of us, the route all of us used in qualification.
I think, Crystal, one of the things it could do is it could mean it's not such the be-all and end-all commitment that qualifying as a solicitor had been in the past. It will be easier to dip in and dip out of your future qualification, and I think that's interesting. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I think the route to qualification will be made a lot easier and a lot, well, maybe not less expensive, but a lot more affordable, if you don't want to take on that much debt in one go. Because I think already I've been seeing firms advertise apprenticeship schemes where you can sort of do your qualification that way. And yes, it will take a little bit longer to fit in with your SQE exams and the qualification as a whole, but at the same time you get to actually start practicing, which is very valuable at the same time. How that's going to work, I don't know. I presume it will work very much like a part-time training contract, but I guess we'll see when they all start happening.
Yes, I think there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of things to learn about. There's another question here, I think from a junior lawyer, saying, when I'm actually in a training contract or have just qualified, and does it look bad to drop out if it's not working out, and perhaps take a year out in Thailand or somewhere? That was a question about, is that a good idea? Career suicide, some might say, or good experience at that stage of the career. Would anybody like to comment on that?
Do you mean you after you finish your training contract and you qualify, then you go for a year? Is that what it means?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. I think it depends on lots of different things, doesn't it? Quite a few people come up to the end of their training contract and they haven't actually secured a job for any number of reasons. Going away to Thailand for a year, personally, I travelled a lot when I was younger, and then went into nursing when I was 24, and then went to university full time, then went into the law. So I think you need to be realistic, but you also need to be aware, and it's not always easy when you're young, but you need to be aware that your life is really, really precious, and you have opportunities to do things when you're younger that are not necessarily that easy as you get older and as your responsibilities mount. So I don't think you should be that precious about it, really. If you're young and the opportunity presents itself to take a year out, personally, I think traveling, for example, gives you a huge amount in terms of perspective and experience. Is somebody in an interview going to raise their eyebrows? What happened during this year? Where were you? Well, I was on a beach in Thailand. Okay. I think it's not the end of the world, and you take opportunities to enrich your life as you can. The world of the law is hard. It's hard work, and when you're young, take opportunities. That's what I think.
I'm going to disagree with Matthew. I think taking a year off in Thailand is a step up from binging on box sets for a year on your sofa. But I have to say that if you've just taken a year to spend time on a beach, if someone was coming to me for a place, I'd be saying, well, might they not take off for another year on a beach after I've invested? Because you've got to bear in mind that firms are investing money and resource in training you. And so they want to see a return on investment if at all possible. Now, if you'd used that year and you'd gone to Thailand and I don't know, you'd taken part in a vaccination program, or you'd done something else that you could say, I did this and achieved this. I will give you an actual live example. Catherine Dixon, the former chief executive of the Law Society, took a year out and set the tandem record for cycling around the world. And you think, and raised huge amounts of money for charity, and you think, wow, that's an achievement. And of course, she came back just before lockdown and walked straight into another job, because that's something where you can say, I did this, it had a purpose. Whereas I'm afraid, Matthew, I don't think a year on a beach in Thailand is enriching anybody's life. So I'd be a bit sniffy about that. Sorry. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I think what both Matthew and Linda are saying is, how do you spend your year out? What spin are you going to put on it as to what you were doing for that period of time? And my instinct on hearing that question as an employee would be very much, you're out to do what? To sit on the beach in Thailand is not really going to make me want to employ you. But if you've taken a year out to do something constructive, or you went and did some pro bono or whatever it was, great. The other thing is that it's a bit of an odd time to take a year out at the end of your training contract, because you want to keep the skill set up and you want to keep abreast with what's changing in the law. So maybe take that year out before you even embark on your training contract, but not halfway through or at the end of it, I suppose. But it really depends on what you took the year out to do, I suppose.
And I would agree with that, and I'm on the Linda camp in all of this one. What I would say as well is think about the age group, the likely age group of the person interviewing you. whether you agree with it or whether you don't, whether you're a kind of, I want to enrich my life with lots of travel camp, or whether you're a slog it out and take on every voluntary role that's going type, which Linda and I are notorious for. It doesn't really matter. The person interviewing you is likely to be considerably older than you, and they're likely to take a view, I think. And law is one of those professions. It's really hard, and academically it's really hard. And I know that there are talks now about making it slightly easier, particularly that'd be great for women with childcare responsibilities, if there's more flexibility to enter the profession, because that's hard if you've got kids. But the reality is you're expected to be dedicated. It's almost a vocation, and I think the person interviewing you is likely to take that view. So it's a risky prospect, no matter how enchanting the idea of a beach in Thailand is. I think show your passion for your job first and foremost.
I think sorry, Christy.
Well, I was just going to touch on what Glynis said about given combining a legal career with having kids, and we've got 3 mums, I think. I don't know how each of you would like to say how easy or difficult you found that. Do you want to go first, Linda?
Oh yes, my only claim to fame really is that I stopped going to school when I was about 14 because I got bored with it. And I got married at 16 and had my first child at 18. And then there I was at 21 with 3 children thinking, oh, what do I do now? It's so boring being at home with 3 children. And then I found the bad news was that I wasn't old enough to be a mature student. In those days, you had to be 27 and I wasn't old enough. So I had to do my A-levels and go into competition with people who were 18, had no responsibilities, and pretend that wasn't the case. And I remember I went to interview after interview for a training contract, and it was really hard to get a training contract in those days. And people would say, 3 girls, are you going to try for a boy? And what will you do if your children are sick? Or all things like this that they wouldn't be allowed to ask. And I remember I went to a really enlightened firm and they said, we wouldn't ask you this, but what do you say to people who ask you if you want a boy? But they did give me a training contract. But I think now it's not allowed to ask those questions, and quite rightly so. But I still think there's a sense that for women with children, they're still viewed as the likely person who will have to look after them. I still say, and forgive me, every man in the room will call, that men can walk away from a crying baby and women by and large don't. And people know that. And so even if it's not said, then there's still that thought that you might be leaving to have children, you might take time off because your children are sick. And I wish it were different. And I think it is changing, but not. I mean, my children were an absolute delight because it's a long time ago now. My eldest is 40 and I can only remember the lovely things, not the awful side of it. And my other claim to fame as president, I was the first mother to admit a child, and I admitted my daughter. And so she's in my portrait, but then my other children felt left out, so they're also in the portrait, so they didn't miss out. But it was a delight and a slog is all I can say. And I think for people who are having children now, like my daughters who are much older, so one of my daughters, the daughter I admitted, is a solicitor. She's got 2 children and she's a major in army legal, and it's tough, and it's actually harder because they're having children when they're older, I think. So it's still hard. And what I think we should all take responsibility for is, as women and men too, when we see somebody that we know is having a hard time and is struggling, we should look at ways of helping them, not ways of criticizing, not ways of doing them down because they're having a hard time. And I wish I had been employed in Glynis's firm, although that's entirely impossible because obviously I was already qualified and my children grown up by then. But I thought Glynis's attitude to working mothers was fantastic. And if all employers had Glynis's attitude, that would be wonderful. I don't know, Glynis, if you want to take over before I ramble to death.
Well, I've always thought, thank you, and thank you for that compliment. That's a huge compliment, and I saw it as an absolute asset to be able to take on women lawyers who had childcare responsibilities. Yes, I offered them the support and the flexibility because I understood. I had a 13-year-old when I decided to retrain as a lawyer, and although he was slightly older, so not quite needing the same care and responsibility, if anything went wrong with him, then I still had to be there for him. But it meant that they were very attracted to my firm. So pretty much all of my lawyers came from the larger firms, and they chose to stay with me, and they chose to stay a long time, I think, because I could offer them a climate in which they could thrive. Two of the women that I made legal directors in my firm both had young children, both were working part-time. And I didn't want that to be a hindrance to their ability to progress and achieve promotion within the firm. But you're rewarded by their dedication and their loyalty and the fact they really appreciate that. Plus which, frankly, when I've interviewed people and they've said that they've slogged their way through their vocational training as lawyers with childcare responsibilities, whether they're male or female, I'm hugely impressed by the fact they've managed it, because somebody who can juggle that many things successfully in their life is going to be a good lawyer. Because one thing I will say to all junior lawyers is, boy, are you going to have to juggle. It's the nature of what we do. You will have a lot of activity and you will need to manage your work diary so very well to meet all of those commitments, just having so many clients in itself. So actually, it's a really, really strong point in an interview if people have come through training with childcare responsibilities. But thank you, Linda. That's a lovely thing to say.
And Gina?
Yes, I remember when I was training, I actually, my eldest was a toddler at the time, so it was myself dropping him off to nursery, going to do my legal clinics, then do my casework, and then picking him up from nursery, and it kept going on like that. And then when I changed firms to finish my training contract with the firm in London, I was commuting out to Northamptonshire. So, and he was probably just in his first year of primary school, I think, by then. But it was an absolute slog, and I was working full time because even though there were legal aid firms, there wasn't really flexibility to go part time, and the case load wouldn't have allowed me to go part time anyway. But I was carrying all of that and doing the drop off to school, and then having to get someone to pick him up from school, and then picking him up when I got back into Leicester, dinner, bed, etc., and then working in the night, or spending the weekends in the daytime with him, and then working in the night. And you have to heavily rely on family, local friends or neighbours that can become your besties, because you need them to help you with childcare. And my partner at the time. So it's not impossible. It definitely is not impossible, and as both Glynis and Linda have said, you will learn a lot about yourself. You will learn a lot about nature, humankind, and it will help you to probably have a better understanding of your clients as well, and where your clients are coming from, especially if you go into the softer side of laws like I did in doing family law as well. So you understand a lot more about humans and what makes them tick as well, if you can deal with all of these different areas of your life, and actually run a successful caseload as well, and getting what you need to get for your clients. But I don't know what the other firms look like now when it comes to flexibility of working, because I've not been employed for quite some time. But I do remember as well going for interviews, and the partner at the time actually saying to me, well, I don't know about, I don't have an issue if you are a young mother with young children. However, my colleagues may do so. The other partners may do so. They don't think that we should employ any young women under the age of 30, 35, because, they're more than likely going to be going off having more children again. It's like, I don't, even at that point, I don't think you were supposed to say that to me, but I was actually quite thankful that he did, because I knew that's not the sort of firm that I wanted to be in. And I said earlier on about setting up my own firm. One of the reasons why I wanted to set up my own firm is that I wanted my staff to feel comfortable coming to work, knowing that if there was a crisis because I've got to run to the school, or whatever it is, look after their children, that there was a possibility that they could do that. And, they wouldn't have me breathing down their neck, because I absolutely understood what it was to be a working mother.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions from the floor?
Yes, we do. This might have been answered from several people who have just spoken after the Thailand conversation. It was just to say that do you think that senior partners and partners are really in tune with well-being of junior lawyers? Because though we've talked on one hand about obviously going abroad, going on holiday, taking a break with your mental health, then the other side you're talking about it's okay to have a family and okay to have life. So are they really in tune with it? Some, obviously we're talking to Glynis, who is in tune and knew exactly what she needed to do, but do you think the majority of senior partners are in tune with junior mental health?
I'm going to ask you to answer that first, because like me, Linda, you see them at the other end when they end up before the tribunal for something very, very simple that if they just rung you, you'd have told them what to do. But yeah, if you want to, on the mental health.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that there are a whole gamut of senior partners. There are enlightened ones like Gina and Glynis, and there are ones who are not enlightened, but also in amongst the mix are people who are struggling themselves. So as well as junior lawyers with mental health problems, it might surprise you to know that I get senior partners calling me with mental health problems, and they have problems of keeping the business together and wondering how they're going to pay the wages. And so I think one of the things I find really difficult about law is how pressurized it is at all levels in keeping body and soul together. So it's not like you're employed by a government organization. So if you're a doctor in a big trust, for example, you know what your salary is going to be. You know that you are going to be able to take time off sick if you need to. And the private sector is so different and so difficult that I think sometimes it can come across as people are uncaring, but I think sometimes lots of people are struggling at all levels. Certainly junior lawyers are struggling, but so too are our senior partners. But having said that, I still cannot get over the Savani James case. The poor young woman who had that ghastly letter from the senior partner telling her that if she didn't work bank holidays, evenings and weekends to make up her target, that she wouldn't have a job, and they kept putting her under pressure until she did make a mistake. She forged a document, and the tribunal wanted to allow her to continue in practice, but the court said no. On appeal, the court said no exceptional circumstance. So the failings, if you make a failing, even with mental health problems, then there is no forgiveness at the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal. So I think the line in Savani James is mental health problems can't excuse dishonesty, but people under pressure can make mistakes and do make mistakes, and those can seem to be dishonest mistakes. They meet the test for dishonesty, but do we really want to hound people out of the profession for that? So what I would say is seek help, and seek help early. As Crystal mentioned, if you're under financial pressure, even if you're in work, you can go to the Solicitors Charity. If you meet their financial tests, you can get financial help. There is Law Care, who have a whole range of support mechanisms. You can ask the Solicitors Charity to fund counselling and psychological problems. You can come to us at the Solicitors Assistance Scheme at the point at which you're about to make that mistake. If Savani James had rung us and said, I'm about to do this because I don't know what else to do, I hope we'd have persuaded her not to do that, to have saved her career and to have walked out of that ghastly firm. And I think she was just lacking somebody to say to her, it doesn't have to be this way, just leave. It's better not to have a job than to stay there and not to have a career. So that's a long rambling answer. And so I'd say some do, some don't, but some have problems too. But the important thing, whatever level you are, is to make sure you seek help, and seek help early. And if you don't know where to go, find any friendly face and contact them and reach out and say, I've got problems, I need help. Don't become a casualty on the back. Well, this is showing my age. I was going to say the back pages of the Gazette. It's now online, but don't do it. There's always a better way. You just need to talk to somebody.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, again, coming into the law from nursing, I think the law is a perfect breeding ground in many ways for junior lawyers to find themselves under sometimes intolerable pressure, because you've got an army and a multitude of very bright, legally qualified kids crawling all over each other, trying to get a toe in the door of a law firm. And when they do, they are absolutely terrified of doing anything that's going to result in them having a black mark against their name. You put that together with the fact that senior partners in law firms are not necessarily there because of their people skills, because they know how to deal with people. They're there because sometimes, quite often, they know how to bring work in and they know how to turn that work into money. But when it comes to dealing with people, they are absolutely terrible quite often. That's true. And too often there are no mechanisms in place to ensure that junior staff are properly looked after and protected. And so you've got somebody junior who will do absolutely anything to ensure that they get on to the next level. Somebody senior who just doesn't know or care. It's a recipe for disaster, I think, too often. And it's great to hear Linda talking about the resources that are out there for junior people to be able to contact if they feel they're in a situation like that young girl that Linda just talked about. Those are terrible situations where people are put under really intolerable pressure. I think these days a good law firm will do everything that it can to ensure that people at all levels are supported and looked after. The job itself is difficult, hard, stressful. And we need to look after each other from senior to junior and all parts of the firm. It's hugely important. And I hope that that is being recognised, has been recognised. And the incidents that we're talking about, that Linda was talking about, will hopefully become less. Anyway, I'll shut up now. I'm waffling a bit as well.
Which takes us back to why we have a joint meeting of our respective organisations, because one of the things that I think Leicestershire Law Society members should do is indicate that when we work with the JLD, if you're a junior lawyer in trouble, the last thing you want to do is discuss it with a senior member of your own firm. But there's other people here from different firms that you'll be able to talk about, whether with a Zoom or social events we may even have. And that is why we ought to maintain such a good connection between our two organisations. Any more questions, Corsa?
Yes, there is one. There's someone who is about to start law school, and she's not sure if when she's pursuing her training contract, I assume, whether she wants to go into becoming a solicitor or a barrister afterwards. What advice would you have? What made you decide to go into being a solicitor, or would you have chosen to become a barrister?
Can I come in on that one first?
Yeah.
I have a fairly clear response to that. Everyone at my law school thought I should become a barrister, and I became a solicitor, and I was quite clear on the reasons for that. And that is because I want to have a relationship with my clients that is ongoing. So in family matters, as Gina will know, we're likely to have our clients on our books for a good 6 months, aren't we? And you look after that client from start to finish. If you're a barrister, you will look after the client perhaps for the conference or when you're acting as their advocate. And the other thing is, of course, solicitors can be both anyway. You can, if you want to go into court and you choose an area where you're a litigator, whether that's civil lit or whether it's family, for example, you can get just as much time in court if you want it, but you also get that opportunity to work intensively with your client. And that was why I chose to become a solicitor. And I also wanted more flexibility. And I think you do have more flexibility to be self-employed or employed, etc.
Yeah. Linda, you do advocacy, don't you, as well?
Sorry, yes, I do. I think I would say, am I unmuted? Hopefully
No.
I'm not.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Good.
Yeah.
I'm going to sort of, I support Glynis's view, but I'm going to take it down to a more sort of practical level. The chances of you qualifying as a solicitor are far greater than your chances of qualifying at the bar, and that's the harsh reality. There are very few pupilages. It is a closed shop. Once you're in at the bar, it is not without its pressures and difficulties. But I have to say the regulatory regime is far nicer and kinder. It's pretty much, oh, you've done something a little bit wrong. Oh, you've lied to the court. Well, don't do that again. It's a little bit more than that, but it isn't the draconian level with which solicitors are treated. It's harsh, but because we look after client money, and that's why we are treated a lot more harshly than the bar are. But what I would say is that you have a better prospect of qualifying as a solicitor. And as Glynis said, you can do all of the things that you do as a barrister, as a solicitor. You can get higher rights, you can do all of those things, but you'll do it in a different environment. And I think you have more autonomy. So I see a lot of people breaking their hearts over getting pupillage, and they end up leaving the law entirely, despite my best efforts at persuading them that being a solicitor is the better thing. The aspects of what your qualification allows you to do, there's no difference, because you will need to take an additional qualification to practice in the Court of Appeal if that's what you want to do, but you can do it. But all of the avenues that are open, judicial appointments, everything else is open to solicitors and barristers equally. And so you've got to look realistically about who you are, where you are. So for example, there are regional chambers, and they are very good, but they are very small and very few of them. The vast majority of chambers and barristers are based in London, in a very small area of London. And it may not be feasible for you to live and work in London. So your chances are diminishing and diminishing. And say, what is it I want to do? Why do I want to be a lawyer? And say, can I do that as a solicitor? And what is the most painless way of me getting to where I want to be? Because there are so many hurdles placed in front of you to be any type of lawyer that you've got to look for a route to where you want to get to be. And you always need a bit of luck. No one gets anywhere in the legal profession without a little bit of luck. I wouldn't have got to where I got to without a little bit of luck. Everybody needs that luck. And you've also always got to be prepared to say, well, I want to be over here, and I wanted to go the direct route, but it may be I have to go here first and then I can go over there. And I've spent an awful lot of my life requalifying in different areas of law by not getting quite to where I wanted first chance. So with my portfolio career, I realized that I had strengths in some areas and weaknesses in other areas. And to get to where I wanted to go, I perhaps had to do some work over here, which wasn't quite what I wanted to do, but it was getting me to where I wanted to be. So I think you've got to be quite clinical about what it is you want and where you want to go. And again, ask other people, ask them for a realistic assessment of what you want to do. Because the other thing I would say that I didn't know, I don't come from a family of lawyers. I had no idea in truth what solicitors did, hadn't a clue. My idea of the law was limited to what I'd seen on TV dramas, and they were always wrong. So try and get some work experience. And I would say work experience in barristers' chambers is fun and exciting, but it's not real life. And work experience in solicitors' firms can seem not quite so exciting in comparison, but that doesn't mean it's not the place to be. It gives you so much more scope. You're not confined in the way you are at the bar. As I say, I've created different careers and people have let me do that. And I don't think I could have done it in the same way at the bar. So find other people that you look up to talk to other people at the JLD, ask their opinion. They have a wider experience. Ask them to put you in touch with contacts, but talk to lots of people, understand what it is you're going to and why, and then plot out the most direct path you can take, even if it's not a straight line, and keep your fingers crossed for some luck. And I'll keep my fingers crossed for you too.
Any other questions?
No, that's all.
But I'm just going to ask one more then. I'm going to ask each panel member, what do you know now that they didn't teach you at law school would be the thing that you would add if you were now setting out? So I'll start with the youngest one, Amanda, first, because the older ones will need to think about it. What do you wish you'd known when you started out, what that they told you at law school?
I'd say it's a bit strange, but maybe it's due to the area that I qualified into, but it's purely the very limited amount of case law that we actually use on day-to-day basis.
I think that's not confined to your area of law.
You learnt all that law at school and you use hardly any of it. Right, who wants to go next? Glynis?
The one thing that I had no idea about and had to learn, and I would advise all junior lawyers to be aware of, is that you must understand and calculate your commercial value to the firm. That may not sound attractive, but if you're going for jobs or you're going for promotion, if you can't even tell them what your fees were, if you don't really understand how your charge out rate converts into recovery and cash into the firm, then you will be hugely disadvantaged in your interview. I always am stunned at how many interviews I've done, and this is with senior solicitors, not just juniors. And I said, tell me what your fees were last year. Oh, I'm not really sure. Maybe it was a bit of this, maybe it was a bit of that. They clearly hadn't got a clue. Because if you can understand how every hour of your day converts into cash for the firm, which I know sounds enormously mercenary and not very idealistic, ultimately you are talking language that those further up will understand. It's not all that they're looking for. Of course, they're looking for integrity, commitment to the job, passion. That goes without saying. But you must understand your commercial value in that firm to get on. And that's something that you won't be taught in law school. But you need to do it even as a trainee solicitor. One of the first things I did was work out my hourly rates, how many hours I had to do a day, projected that onto a turnover. And I remember saying to the partner there when I was a trainee, so I should be able to bring in, I don't know, whatever it was, 100,000 by the end of the year. And he laughed at me and said, oh, it isn't how it works really for trainees. And I said, why not? That's my charge out rate. And I got more than I set out to get because I was aware of my commercial value and I aimed for it. So that would be my advice.
Gina?
I think it'd be not being self-limiting. I remember a few years ago, the SRA commissioned a report into diversity around Black and minority ethnics and how they fared in the law and where they went to. And the report actually found that people of people of colour tend to be pushed into legal aid work doing the softer side of law. So you're doing the family law, the welfare law and everything else. And I look at myself and I think that's exactly how I started out in law. And although I actually love doing family law, because I just really feel like I'm touching people's lives and actually just trying to make their pain a little bit less and setting them up for a brighter future, I do wonder whether I would have looked at commercial law if somebody had spoken to me about commercial law in the very beginning when I was at law school, or whether I was always going to be that family lawyer and that was how I was going to live my life. But I just think don't be self-limiting, don't be put off by, because people will talk about what they did when they started off in practice and when they started in commercial practice, and to stand out from the others, they were putting all these great reports and they were going out there networking and doing this massive bit of work to be to stand before the partners, so the partners could actually identify them amongst the rest of the cohorts of trainees and juniors and so forth. And I just think, don't be put off by that, and don't be afraid, and set your skies, your sights on the sky really, and press for it, because you know, as Linda said, that this thing is a bit about luck. You know, getting to law is a bit about luck, being in the right place at the right time and meeting the right people, and you know, and building your personal relationships. All of that sort of comes together later on in your career. So the beginning of your career might look a little bit rocky, but later on in your career, you might find yourself in a really good position and doing what you want to do.
Matthew?
Excuse me. Well, I absolutely agree with everything that's been said so far. I think whilst I absolutely agree with what Glynis has said in terms of the huge importance of being aware of your commerciality, your commercial value, how things work in law firms. They're private firms. It's a merciless commercial environment that we work in. That is really important. It's really important to get your head around how that works. But this is also really important. Don't lose the passion and the ideals about the law along the way. The law is the one massive progressive factor in our world, I think. And we as lawyers hold the line. Hugely important role that we play. And as and when you get into the law, don't lose that pride about the role that you play as a lawyer. Whatever area of law it might be, it doesn't matter. We play a hugely important role. And when at 10:30 on a Thursday morning, you've just spilt your coffee over some papers and your line manager's shouting down the phone at you, you've got a client who's just sent you a shirty email, it can seem a long way off. Don't lose the passion, don't lose the integrity, don't lose sight of the fact that it's a hugely important role. And keep going. Take your lickings. You will get lickings. You will get kickings. Pick yourself up. Keep going. Keep going. You will get there.
Thank you, Matthew. And Linda?
Well, I can't really top what Matthew said, but one of the things I'm known for is I always bring things down to the dark side. And the dark side here is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the big red book saying don't panic. I wish every newly qualified and trainee was given that big red book, and obviously it would have helpful contact details like the SAS, Law Care and the Solicitors charity details, where to get help. And the other thing I would say, and I would say this as a regulatory lawyer, wouldn't I, but the SRA rules and code of conduct and the eligibility requirements, make sure you are familiar with them and make sure that you get help if you think you may be about to breach them. So all of these things are, I don't want to terrify people, but it is important that you keep things in proportion and you realize nothing's that bad that can't be sorted out unless you've tried to cover it up. So go for help when you need it. Don't panic. Don't do what I did, which I mentioned earlier, which is I used to drive home every night up the M1 sobbing until I got home and dried my tears at the end of the road. Don't do that. Nothing's ever that bad. There's help out there, and go and get that help. And as Matthew said, when it goes well, there's nothing better than being a lawyer. But it can not sometimes not feel like that. Sometimes it can be very painful. Don't let it wound you.
Thank you very, very much, all of you. I'm now going to ask Rishi to propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of the JLD. Unmute yourself, Rishi.
Good evening, everyone. Wow, what a fantastic evening that was, and genuinely feel really blessed to have had such a dynamic panel. It may require separate conversation with Crystal, but I could really see this being an in-person event. It'll be lovely to do something because actually it's been truly inspirational and lovely to see our former JLD president Amanda on the panel. It's always been such a pleasure working with Crystal and Kosa and the Leicestershire Law Society. I'm just really happy that we've been able to do a few of these joint events. So thank you ever so much to the Leicestershire Law Society and to the Leicestershire Junior Lawyers Division. If there are any junior lawyers that have attended today, I think there's some law students, please feel free to reach out to us. We are pretty active on social media, and genuinely hope we can all meet up very soon. Thank you all so much. There's so much I've taken away from this evening. I mean, I'm approaching 2 years PQE, but I'm just learning so much that I might even be picking a few of your brains as well after this evening's event. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, Rishi. Well, we've had a very entertaining hour. Thank you once again from me to the panel members, and we'll close down. Thank you.